Mackenzie.
Lemar.
We're doing the rules of attraction.
You don't have enough syllables for that, I just want to say.
I know, it's always a little more difficult to copy my name. So we're doing the rules of attraction this week. We're starting off another month of Love Stinks, which we did last year. But I wanted to know, if you wrote the book, The Rules of Attraction, not the Bret Easton Ellis novel, but a real life version of what are the rules of attraction, what would be your rule number one? What would be chapter one in this book?
Men and women cannot be friends. Single,
Ooh.
asterisk. Single men and women cannot be friends.
Isn't it also a case of like single men and taken women can't be friends, and like after they break up, then everyone comes out of the woodwork and has catches feelings? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah,
I've heard that from female friends. Like,
as soon as you break up with a person, everyone who has wanted to make a thing, make a move, shoot their shot, will do it, and they will do it in record time. Like, there's no respect for mourning periods, right? There's no like, hey, she needs a solid 6 weeks to just be alone, right? There's like, she has been single for 6 hours and it's the time, or we'll never have another chance, you know? So yeah, I think that's my number one rule. Not at all speaking from experience, obviously.
not at all.
So what about you?
For me, I don't know. It's hard to think of a rule one because we kind of did this on the spot pretty impulsively, this warm-up question. I would say that one of the top ones, though, would be don't assume that everyone that's being nice to you is flirting with you. So dudes, stop falling in love with your bartenders and people helping you at the mall or strippers of all things. Like, they are literally paid to make you feel important. So I've just been around a lot of dudes who think, oh, she's like flirting with me. I'm like, nope, they are just doing their job. And that is not attraction. So learn to distinguish that, boys.
Can we do this at the beginning of every single episode? Just make this a like rules of attraction guide. This is now a love podcast. You didn't realize, and we're gonna give advice every week. And Lamar's gonna educate some men because this is a man I trust actually to do this. So I think this is our new vibe.
I'm not gonna sit here and put myself holier than thou. I am 41, and I think I'm speaking in some of these rules from experience. So I have made the same missteps, but I hope that I can educate some young ones based on that.
Yeah, pass on, what you had to learn through pain so that they don't have to learn it the hard way.
Dude, I've fallen in love with so many strippers.
Oh, we remember your stripper story. Don't think we don't. All right, well, let's talk this rules of attraction.
Yeah.
Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lemar.
And if you are one who skips the cold open, just to set the stage, we are running back Love Stinks this year. So if you guys recall, last year we did Love Stinks as a response to Valentine's Day in February and dumb love stuff. And we thought we would talk about some like not so lovey love movies, love stories.
Yes, they don't get enough attention. I feel like everyone likes to watch rom-coms and like happy endings. Occasionally it's fun to throw yourself into one that doesn't necessarily have those things.
And this one super does not. This one barely has a fucking ending. Like, it barely has a fucking ending. Yeah. Anyways, we are kicking things off with rules of attraction. And I personally am going to need all the drinks to get through this one. So what are we drinking today?
Well, we are drinking 1.5 ounces of mezcal, half an ounce of palm liqueur, an ounce of fresh blood orange juice, an ounce of lime juice, 1/4 to 1/2 ounce of agave syrup, and a pinch of salt. And you're going to put that in a shaker, strain it into a rocks glass. I did tahini on the outside of mine. Did you do tahini?
I did not.
I just decided.
I missed the memo.
I didn't send it. But I was like, felt like the move. And this is kind of a twist on a blood and smoke cocktail, but we are calling this, for the purpose of this movie, the emotional vampire. The palm is what makes it different.
We sure are. So I added a pink ice cube because
nice.
I still have dyed
color.
Ice cubes. Yeah. So
and I don't know if it's like all the citrus in here, but mine has this nice little froth at the top, and I'm kind of digging that. I don't know if you got that too, but there's a lot of citrus. Cheers.
There is. Cheers. I almost put, so fun aside, I feel things about this film. And I have, as many of y'all know, like different types of ice molds, and I have a snake mold. And I was like,
Ooh,
oh,
that would have been
this would
fitting.
be perfect for this, except they're still dyed from Halloween. So they're green. And I was like, it'll ruin the color. So you're welcome for respecting your cocktail design.
Yes.
Okay, let's do some basics and then let's get to it. All right. Rules of Attraction 2002, which is a critical point that we will keep coming back to. This is a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb, 45% from critics, and 71% from audiences, which I, again, have so many questions about, like when audiences said, yes, I recommend watching this versus not. So to say it's a product of its time would be probably a bit of an understatement. Especially if you understand when the source material was written as well. So I think there's a lot of factors here.
I was trying to explain this to Janelle last night, and I told her, I was like, I can't exactly pinpoint how exactly I feel about this movie. I do not love it. It's not one of my favorite films, but I enjoy it enough to watch it like once every, I don't know, 5-10 years. Since 2002. I've seen this probably a half dozen times. It's different, I think. But it's like I don't love it, but I own it on DVD, and I don't own a ton of. I'm not like, I know you have a ton of physical media. I do not have a ton of physical media, but I've got maybe 50 movies back there, and one of them is Rules of Attraction. So like I do find the comedy bits in this very enjoyable, despite the super dark subject matter. And I'm sure we'll get into the comparisons to Bret Easton Ellis's other novels as well.
Yeah, wow. If you're watching, great. If you're not watching, my face when he's like, "This is the one of the ones that I own," because yes, he has a very small collection. I have a huge collection, and I would not buy this movie on physical media. Even though, again, if you watch our stories, I recently defended the importance of physical media. But this is a hard no for me.
Maybe it's one of those like watching reality TV scenarios where you're just like, I'm better than these people. Maybe that's why I like it, because it's just shitty people.
It's so funny. It's such a great call out, actually, of like why people can look at the train wreck that is these people's lives and be like, okay, well, at least I feel better about myself. I guess. I didn't feel better about myself. I just felt disgusted with them, but we'll see. Okay. So director here, Roger Avary, a bit of like a forgotten director, I think, in our current era. He's done a few things. For the sake of time, I just picked one thing for everybody. In this case, he did Killing Zoe, was one of the more well-known ones that for him. He also wrote this film, and he has been a contributing writer to many other films, notably Tarantino films. So he did like the background radio dialogue that we hear and that we talked about in our episode at length for Reservoir Dogs, but only that in the film. So
he's a weird outlier in Hollywood. I assume that he and Tarantino are friends, right? That's kind of what the parallel, like the point I can draw from looking at their histories, because he gets an uncredited co-writing thing on True Romance, and then apparently he wrote the actual Gold Watch story for Pulp Fiction, like as a standalone story, and Tarantino took it and grew it and put it in the sequence of these other events of the movie, so much so that one of the quotes that he had in that original script that didn't make the cut about having an asshole on your elbow makes its way into Rules of Attraction, and eventually Tarantino uses the line in Kill Bill Volume 2. So like they've got this buddy thing, but it hasn't paid huge dividends, I don't feel like, because he hasn't done a lot, Avary.
No, I mean, he certainly fell off, like he had kind of a run there, and then all of a sudden, nada, really. So, I don't think it's paid off great for him. I will say Bret Easton Ellis, our source novel writer, however, is of course pretty prolific in terms of his output and has had several things adapted. I think it's 4 of his films have been adapted. The one we have talked about most notably and probably his most well received, despite not being his favorite, is American Psycho. And that one, like, not that he didn't like it, it's just this one is his favorite adaptation, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah. And I mean, I was looking, when we say this is a product of its time, it's not just, the actors and actresses and sort of the vibe of this entire thing of indulgence and whatnot, but Less Than Zero came out in 1987. The movie adaptation of Less Than Zero with like Robert. I haven't seen that one, but apparently Robert Downey Jr. is in it, very young. But the American Psycho comes out in 2000. This comes out in 2002. So this, as we said, product of its time. It felt like they were just like, oh, he has more books. Let's fucking make another movie because American Psycho was so well received. So again, product of that, I think.
Well, and I think this was written in 87. So again, like with the product of its time conversation, there was such a he talks briefly about like this disillusionment with life at that age, right? And like in that decade, but also of that age of life for him. And so he has said a couple of times that like aspects of these characters are semi-autobiographical in that he went through some of these feelings at various times. Like none of them are him as a character, but just he's had some of these feelings at various times and extrapolated them out into a story. And so I think we see certainly a lot of that in American Psycho. Like he talked about that being about his father and then later owned that it was more about him and blah, blah, blah. And I think that there's aspects of that in this film as well, which for me, even though I love the literary factor and I want to do the research and I want to understand where it comes from, it just didn't help matters. Like I expected it to help me enjoy this more. And in my case, it didn't. So I don't know, but just different experiences for sure. Different times.
You said the literary factor, and like, it is interesting to me that we were considering doing the other theme we had in mind for this month was book adaptations into movies. And we said, no, let's do Love Stinks. But the first two we're doing are literally book adaptations into movies.
That is so funny. We accidentally ended up in the same place. Good job.
I feel like this was an intentional move on your. If I find out 500 Days of Summer is based on a book, I'm going to be pissed. So I don't want to go too much into it because I've read the book once. I don't remember much about it. So I don't want to go into that. But one thing I did think was cool because you were talking about his headspace when he was writing this. Dude was like, I want to say around 20. His first book gets adapted into a movie when he's 23 years old. That's fucking insane. So yeah, he was a baby when he was writing this.
21. Yeah.
That's insanity. So it's the fact that he's writing these, hateable but complex characters like the Patrick and Sean Batemans of the world at such a young age. Either, he's got a lot of life experience or he's kind of fucked up in the head, or like is at least able to take his mind to those places, which is weird to think about such a youngster pumping this out.
Yeah, I think we'll get into more of that later because like, for me, it helped to explain it, like where this particular story came from, like at his age and in his life. For me, it helped understand at least. So real quick, major cast rather, James Van Der Beek, obviously. And this was really not planned, to be honest, with his recent passing. But I will say, while we're here, rest in peace. Seemed like a genuinely really wonderful guy, actually. So it's nice to talk about one of his films, albeit one of his least likable characters. So I apologize in advance for the things I'm going to say about Sean Bateman. Sean Bateman, not James Van Der Beek. He's done, as we know, Varsity Blues, Dawson's Creek. Like he's most well known for Dawson's Creek. We love him for Dawson's Creek, but less so for this one.
He also played himself in like The Jay and Silent Bob, both films. So the fact that he was willing to kind of poke fun at him being like the Dawson's Creek guy for so long, I feel like you said, I never met the man, but it seems like he was a genuinely good dude. So fuck cancer. It's really sad to think about. It's 24 years. Like 24 years is not that long of a time to see him go in this movie from this baby faced like youngster to knowing that he passed a few weeks ago is a bummer.
Yeah. And I mean, while we're on the fuck cancer note, get your various screenings because it makes a big difference. I will say. So Shannyn Sossamon here, we've talked about her before on the pod. Funnily enough, seemingly a lot of times. Yes, it's kind of surprising. But she plays Lauren Hyde, and we talk about my favorite that I've said before is A Knight's Tale for her. That's my favorite thing that she's
a small part in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but not really much to write home about.
Right. And then we have Kip Pardue plays Victor. We just talked about him in Remember the Titans. He's Ronnie.
And Kate Bosworth, both in Remember the Titans. She's got that tiny part in here too.
Yeah, she plays Kelly, and she's done Blue Crush is the one I always think of her from. It's not the only thing, but it's always the first thing that pops into my mind. Jessica Biel plays Lara, and she was in The Illusionist. I think we've mentioned that before. That's one of my faves that she's in. Ian Somerhalder, the baby face Ian Somerhalder in this one, I cannot get over it. He just looks so fucking different and like just clean cut, pretty boy.
To blow up, right?
Yeah, right before. Yeah. He plays Paul Denton, and you've talked about him on Lost, and I remember him from Vampire Diaries, which again just looks radically different. Clifton Collins Jr. plays Rupert, most notably from Star Trek. And then Thomas Ian Nicholas plays Mitchell, which we know probably, there are a lot of things that he's supposedly better known for, but I feel like people know him from American Pie.
I was
But
gonna
I could be
say,
wrong.
when we're gonna keep repeating ourselves, but fucking product of its time. You have Thomas Ian Mitchell all growed up. I remember him from Rookie of the Year, the baseball movie when I was a kid, where he breaks his shoulder and then goes to play for the Dodgers or some shit. Like it was a kids movie, but I remember from
Mm,
that. You have Fred Savage from the Wonder Years doing like heroin through his toes. But then on the flip side, like you said, we have like baby Ian Somerhalder, and you have super baby Jay Baruchel from like Knocked Up and How to Train Your Dragon. So this is
yes.
just like again 2002, and I'm looking at where these people went or where they came from. It's interesting.
We're all over the place in this one, honestly, because we also have Swissy Kurtz, who plays Mrs. Jared, and she did fun. Like we know her, probably most people know her from Liar Liar, but I remember her in Bubble Boy. Did you ever see Bubble Boy?
Yes, I liked Bubble
Oh my
Boy.
gosh.
Gyllenhaal,
Bubble
right?
Boy was such a weird fucking movie. And I mean, it was good, but it was weird. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. We also have Faye Dunaway, classic, like behemoth of cinema, this woman. And she's in this film as Mrs. Dent. We talked about her in Network, and she's done Chinatown and all these brilliant things. Um, and then the last couple I wanted to shout out, you grabbed a bunch of them, but Joel Mickley, who did Raymond, which was, I remember him from But I'm a Cheerleader.
Hmm.
And then Eric Stoltz, who I think we can't get away with not mentioning here. His character is fucking horrible. He plays Mr. Lawson. We know him from Pulp Fiction and other things, but
And you
man.
don't know him from Back to the Future, which everyone knows he was originally cast as Marty McFly and eventually went to Michael J. Is there any chance, Mackenzie, as the cinema buff here, is there any chance that Michael J. Fox found out they were making a movie about time travel and he jumped into the DeLorean and went back and recast himself and he got the part over Eric Stoltz? Is there an alternate universe or a timeline where Eric Stoltz is still Marty McFly?
You know, if I would give credit to anybody to be able to pull that off, it would be
Mm-hmm.
Michael J. Fox. So like
Okay.
I could see it. I could see it.
There's a
Maybe that
conspiracy theory to be had there. Yeah.
maybe that timeline is better though. I don't know. This one's kind of garbage. Yeah, no, totally possible. Okay, well, we have again a behemoth cast here, very reflective of the time, lots to talk about. Very quick plot summary. The incredibly spoiled and overprivileged students of Camden College are a backdrop for an unusual love triangle between a drug dealer, a virgin, and a bisexual classmate.
That's
Accurate.
pretty solid, yeah. And I mean, it gets across the fact that these are not likable people. I don't think you're supposed to sympathize with any of them, really.
No, and that's gonna be on theme today, I would
Yeah.
say. And this, but I will say, like, it didn't do gangbusters when it came out. It was a pretty divisive film, but it made okay money. I mean, it was a low budget. It was 4 million, and they made 11.8 against that budget. But the budget was so fucking tight that Avary had to pay for one of the like European Trek scenes that we see Victor take, and he foot the bill for all of that and filmed it all with like a handheld camera, which I will say lends like an authentic vibe to
Yeah.
this story that's very impactful. But I think it's just indicative of the tight budget they were working with to begin with.
Yeah, doing the research for this, I found Roger Avary, for a guy that doesn't seem to have a lot of clout in Hollywood, certainly has a lot of opinions, and a lot of the facts I found were just quotes of him kind of puffing himself in this film up and trying to defend why it is great. I won't go that far. I do like this movie. But to your point about it not making much money, he just feels as though it was completely mismarketed. This is an American Psycho. I would compare it most to that type of movie of like hateable characters doing fucked up things, but somehow it is a dark comedy. And it was just marketed as like a teen comedy, whereas Avary said this is supposed to be like represent, quote unquote, the assassination of the teen comedy. You mentioned American Pie, and this is like Dude, Where's My Car? And like all this era of those types of comedies, silly comedies coming out. This was not meant to be that at all, but it was apparently just really poorly marketed. And I think that's part of why it sucked at the box office.
Well, and I can't speak to how it was marketed. I don't remember, to be honest. And maybe it was also just poorly marketed at all, because I didn't hear about it really in real time. But what I will say is that, again, he said he wanted it to be, he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, I think would be my complaint there, because he's saying, I want it to be an art house film for teenagers. That in and of itself is a fucking oxymoron 9 times out of 10, right? Like, to achieve that for a teenage audience is pretty difficult, right? And so
What's an
if
art
you were,
house film for teenagers? Like Harry and the Hendersons?
I don't know. Can't think of one example. Can't be that. It can't be that. I don't know what it would be.
Maybe like Lady Bird or
You
a
know what? That's probably
17. I don't
closer.
know.
That's probably closer, to be honest. A
I'm
ladybird
going to
is
stick with
closer.
Harry and the Hendersons. I think that's the one.
I'll accept the submission, I guess, because this didn't do it. I'll tell you that. But yeah, I just don't know. I think he in retrospect has a defense of what he was going for. I don't know that it comes
Right.
through in the building of this film, is what I
Yeah.
would say. Okay, so it's old, but just to be fair here, turn around, don't drown. It's spoiler time.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I just have to get it out of the way. The way that this opens up
Yeah.
is so
hot out of the gate.
fucking triggering. Like, not since A Clockwork Orange have we seen such a brutal representation. And I'm going to take this moment in all seriousness. If you are listening to this episode, I'm giving you the biggest of trigger warnings. There are so many things in here. There is sexual assault. There are attempted suicides and some otherwise depictions of suicide. And we take very seriously how impactful that is. This was a very hard watch, and it could also be a very hard listen. So if that's not for you, I highly recommend that you turn it off. That was you, and you warned me. I will give you all the credit in the world. Like, when we talked about this last, like, you warned me there's some key moments in this that you have to be able to get past or sit through or what have you to be able to appreciate any of the rest of it. And I'm going to be honest with you, even with that warning, that was so fucking hard for me to do. Like, I paused it multiple times. I like took breathers. I was like,
Yeah.
it opens basically with a rape. I mean, we have to just be super clear about that. And I just don't know that it's necessary. That's a big part of my problem here. That's a big part of my problem with this film, is like, the way it is depicted does not feel necessary. It feels gratuitous.
I think that's fair. I don't want to drill too heavily or use American Psycho as like a defense for this film, but I feel like they are the same way. And it's very, I mean, in American Psycho, you have a homeless man being stabbed to death. You have a dog being killed. You have multiple, sexual assaults or violence in that, and a lot of really fucked up moments. I think what that movie does a little differently than this one is it doesn't immediately throw you right into it like this one does within the first 5 minutes, to your point. And it's also the way that it's presented. Like, I felt a little dirtier this time watching it, which is kind of the same thing we said about American Psycho. Like, because of the way that Bret Easton Ellis writes, everything is very matter of fact. And it's just like, this is something that is happening. You have these inner monologues of characters talking you through the horrible things that are happening to them. And occasionally, like, not making light of it, but definitely trying to put sort of like a dark comedy tone to it. And I don't think it always works in this, for sure.
Yeah, that's actually such a key point for me in this, is like what you said about the dark comedy undertone. And I'm actually fine keeping a comparison to American Psycho, because it helps me root this in some kind of tangible goal, to be honest. But I don't find the comedy. That's like my number one complaint about this movie. And it's described out, like, y'all, the way I put effort into liking this movie, I really just, I don't want to spend 2 weeks in a row just raging against shitty movies that I think are shitty. I watched so many interviews about this movie. I did research about the analysis of this movie. I did research of the literary analysis of the book. I read Reddit threads to see what people found in it. I really did try to find the defense of this film in again of its time. And one of the biggest things that people called out was the performances, which I think are very strong. I will totally give it that. And the dark comedy. And it was like, there's so much dark humor here, in the same way that American Psycho did this. I believe that American Psycho did that very well. I remember that. That's kind of its saving grace, really, of how insane the satire is. I don't find this super, like, I'm struggling to find the humor. And I don't know how much of it is, again, how it opens and how disconcerting that is and how much it just throws you off. But nothing felt super funny. Like, there was maybe one line that gets a chuckle for me here or there, but like, it just didn't feel like I love a dark comedy. This didn't feel like that.
I think that's fair, and I think on a first watch through, I probably felt exactly the same. Where that opening 15 minutes leaves such a bad taste in your mouth, um, that it makes the rest of the movie difficult. So I totally hear you on that. I also think the other difference is that whereas American Psycho is more really needling and poking fun at these archetypes of characters of businessmen in the 80s, this one, and maybe it's just due to the screenplay writer, but like this one feels more like they are trying to, I don't want to use the term like make a hero, but like some of the dialogue that Sean has, in that first scene, not something I would normally say, but where he's like giving his internal monologue and he's like, oh, she has dick sucking lips and like I could do these things. I could go home and fuck her. And he's being so like, it feels like there is a style of dude that would attach to that and be like, oh yeah, he's badass. And I don't think that's the intent, but it's something about the way the dialogue and these internal monologues that are very full of themselves. I wrote that down. I was like, this movie does kind of smell itself a little too much at parts with some of these choices of phrases that they're using to just make themselves sound smarter, which again could be a product of the characters themselves. But I'm with you for the most part.
And I promise I'll point out some things that are well done here. Like I said, the performances are strong. But one of the things, to your point, that really bugs me about the internal monologue there is like it is such a bro monologue, which again in American Psycho is done in this like this is so absurd, it's satirical kind of way. This doesn't feel like it's doing that. It feels like it's trying, to your point, appeal almost to that audience, right? Like I'm going to find my bros, my people, like my community with this monologue. And those are the people that I have 0% interest in, right? So it's like I don't find that to be endearing in any way. But one of the things that is called out, again, did a lot of research to figure out why we like this. And one of the things that people said was that James is a sympathetic figure because he's not able to improve himself. He has these hindrances, whatever. This is a wealthy, white, attractive man with some kind of money, not a ton of money, but comes from money. So do not fucking speak to me about how this man cannot improve himself. And it's so sad. Like, if he wanted to, he would, number one. And number two, the biggest struggle I see him have in this particular like series of vignettes is poor communication skills. Like he can't figure out what's going on around him. I don't think that's
that's what I was going to say was if we haven't addressed yet the connection to American Psycho and that he is supposed to be the brother of Patrick Bateman. It's confirmed in the actual novels themselves. They cut that out of this movie because it does seem like almost gimmicky. I don't think you need that.
They did have a deleted scene where he's supposed to be calling his brother for money. Actually, he's calling Patrick Bateman, but it wasn't Christian Bale. It was another guy. And I wonder if that's part of why, but they cut it out of him calling him.
I'm glad I don't need that in this, honestly. But if we're going with that line of logic, just to kind of defend here, in American Psycho, like Patrick Bateman is well aware that he is a sociopath and he's making no attempts to better himself. He's just like sees the world through blinders. And there are a couple scenes in that where it feels like he's developing a conscience. Specifically, like I'm thinking of the secretary scene. But in this, the only kind of redeeming quality that we see in Sean is when he's getting these love letters. And that's the only time that we see him give these sort of genuine smiles and laughter. And I feel like that is him not trying to be a better person, but it's showing you there is some form of like innocence lost within that inability to connect with anyone. Yeah.
Well, I think yes, I agree. I think those are the moments where you see like another thing that I tried to reframe this in is like somebody said this is a bunch of people looking for connection, right? They actually are looking for connection and finding ways to experience love and sincere love. And that in this film, sincerity is not rewarded, right? Like and it's partially the love triangle thing, and it's partially like the miscommunication trope too of we don't know whose affection is directed at who and everybody's confused, right? So there's part of that contributes to their inability to actually feel and actually connect because of this lack of communication and understanding. And you do see in Sean that moment of humanity. The reason I think it doesn't help him be that sympathetic is because of the way he treats it. Like he treats it almost like, not in the moments where he's receiving the love letters, which are very endearing. It's in the rest of his actions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't actually move him towards a different behavior or communicating with Lauren in a clear and concise way of like, I've been getting your letters. I'm so flattered. I would love to explore this in a sincere way. The sincere feelings that he's having when he receives these letters are not acted upon in a real way.
He
And
kind
and
of
that to me
addresses
is
it
like he
later.
could have easily done that, you know?
Yeah, he kind of addresses it later when he's having that internal monologue about Lauren and like talking about if we did have sex, would that ruin my image? And I think that might be the lesson here because you talked about misconnections and like what is really like wanting or loving somebody and how much of attraction is purely physical or like I think the lesson of this is to not fall in love with the idea of a person. Like there is so
Yeah.
much and they say that at the end of like no one's ever going to you're never going to know me. I don't agree with like no one ever knows anyone else, but I
Right.
get the like you've known me for had a crush on me for 2 weeks. You don't fucking know me. Like you don't love me. You're attracted to
God
me, and
bless.
there's a big difference.
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach, brother, preach. I mean, that is so like another, we're talking about rules of attraction. That's my other rule. But okay, so in an effort to not completely bash this, I think
No.
one of my questions to you then would be the Sean dynamic, right? Like the Paul love triangle to Sean is really interesting
Yeah.
because again, I think it's a bit more sincere than these other things, even though again it's kind of a crush. To your point, it's more of a crush because he doesn't know him that well, but he does like him and want to explore that. um do you, I guess that's my exactly my question, do you think that that is sincere or that is manipulative on Paul's part, or it's a conquest on Paul's part? Because what we see of Paul up to now is like pretty shallow, right?
I think this movie, what it does a good job of, and it's kind of tacks on to my last point, is the way that you perceive your own feelings and actions when pursuing a crush, a romance, whatever it is, might look completely different to everyone else around you. So just because you think that you are, you know, a white knight or what have you, or you're a romantic and you're writing letters to somebody, that could be interpreted as you being a stalker or a creep. Like it's all very
Mm-hmm.
subjective. So I think Paul thinks that it is legitimate, but I personally, when I watch it, I think it is more of a conquest. He's going around
Okay.
campus and poking fun and almost picking on dudes who we assume that he's had experiences with in the past, you know, like homosexual experiences, and he's kind of
Mm-hmm.
needling them just to be like, yeah, I had you, and like now you're
Yeah.
ashamed of it. But like he's not a great person either, despite him probably being the most sympathetic of the three characters in this. But yeah, I think he sees it as another conquest. And I mean, take that scene where there's the splits. Let's get into after this, like some of the things this movie does really well, which I think visually it's awesome, and it did for 2002 some very creative things. But that scene where the screen splits and you have Paul imagining what could be happening with Sean in the room and they
Right.
kind of are hooking up. Meanwhile, in the real world, he's just masturbating under a pillow staring at the put a female character in Sean's place for that scene and it becomes a lot more creepy, I think. Like not that it isn't, but that's
Yeah.
fucked up that there's somebody sitting in the room with you not paying attention and you're jerking off like watching them. So I think this is very much a conquest and nothing more. But he
Well, and
thinks it's
see,
something more.
well, okay, well, and that's more compelling too, because
Yeah.
so what I was about to say is like, if it is a conquest, it makes this less interesting to me, right? Like, where I am less invested in this character. Sean, like, I kind of write off Sean, right? But Paul and Lauren both can have some redeeming qualities, have these things that are like, they seem like they're a bit more in their feels. And Paul is up against the fact that he's bi in an era where like, this is very much presented, by the way, again, of the time of him being very metro. I don't know if y'all remember this term at
Yeah.
this time. It was like this
And
metro
this is
guy.
this set in like the early 90s? Is that the vibe you're getting? Late 80s? Like when is the cuz it's not 2002. There's no I don't think
I
there's
think
any
it's like
cell
late
phones.
90s. I think it's like, because
Okay.
there are some
Okay.
things that are very like early 2000s in the behavior. So I think it's
Got
supposed
it.
to
Okay.
be
Sorry, I interrupted.
late. No, that's fine. I think it's like late 90s, but he's presenting this persona. And I think the only thing that like was salvageable to me about him again was that this might be rooted in something real. But to your point, he has this pattern of behavior. There's nothing that we see that really buys us into why Sean would be different in any way. And to be honest, he's kind of being rebuffed repeatedly. Like Sean barely remembers who he is, you know?
There is
So
something semi-endearing, like when we talk about Sean and how hateable he is. I wrote down there's something sort of endearing about him potentially not realizing he's being flirted with this whole time, where he's like, "Oh, you have weed in your room? Yeah, I'll come to your room. Yeah, let's like sit down and like watch it." Like he seems so oblivious, which I think again ties to the fact that he can't read these sort of social cues, and he's just like a shark in the water, an emotional vampire, like going out and doing fucked up things because he has no other way of connecting with people.
I think the emotional vampire part is really key there, right? Of like he's sucking this attention for a reason from this
Yeah,
person
true.
because it powers him. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I think it's kind of in terms of the film, and again, very much of the time, I think it's problematic how they show Paul, right? It gives this like predatory gay guy, bisexual guy behavior that is rooted in homophobia, that's rooted in this fear of gay men will pursue you. And I don't mean that's the source material. I don't even mean that that's the intent of Roger Avary. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying his towards this straight man who is indicating that he is straight is, I don't think, a great way to portray this dynamic. But I
Well,
do
but I
think,
think that's part of the because otherwise, I think you risk. Okay, we're gonna have two characters that are kind of fucked up, and I think we haven't really talked too much about Lauren, but like we find out at the end, she's kind of just as not as fucked up, but like she's got her own shit going on. So I think if you do make Paul this like beacon of like pure romance in this, I think it takes away from the story. And like for the record,
no, I
I've
agree. I think the layers are more compelling. What I'm saying is that the layer that they add is problematic to like the gay community.
I mean, it can be
it makes him
problematic, but it's one character in a film. And for the record, I've been friends with several gay people. I've met probably hundreds of gay people over my life. I've met people who are like this person, who are pursuant. And I know, like, I've heard from female friends, guys that just don't take the fucking hint. Like, I've met gay men who I tell them I'm straight, and it has happened. I'm not saying it's happened more than twice, but there are people out there like this. I don't think it's based on a stereotype, but it is taking the worst part of a community and putting it on the screen. So I see
Well,
what you're
that's what
kind
I'm
of
saying. I
saying.
think it's exacerbating a stereotype that is not rooted
Mm.
in pervasive reality, is what I would say. And the thing about Lauren that I actually like about her is that even though she has this fucking horrible traumatic thing happen to her, um, she doesn't ever present as a victim here. And it's not to say that she doesn't feel some kind of way about that experience, right? Like she had a vision for what her first time was going to be like. She had a vision for all these things that is really just completely, destroyed. Um, but she has this kind of quiet strength throughout of like she kind of moves past it. Now, we could say
Well,
she's not dealing with it,
let's
but
remember that we start at the end. That was the other thing I was going to point out at the very beginning, is that party at the end where that event happens to her, then we rewind and we are leading the whole movie up to that party. So that is what
yeah,
happens at the very end. So throughout the movie, she's not coping with that. It doesn't happen until
right.
technically when her and Paul walk out of this into the snow at the
That's such a
very
good
end.
call out because there are multiple points where it feels to me like a flashback almost, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like that it's not just an immediate switch of the beginning to the end, like almost like it's coming in and out. So that's, I mean, that is a good part. But I actually like even with that, I like that they chose to focus the majority of her storyline on who she was prior to this, right? Like not leaning
Yeah.
into not leading into the damage or trying to again show her as a victim of
Yeah,
this thing.
it's more building up her tragedy of she's got an interest, she's got two guys that she's very interested in, and she has, to your point, like this vision of what she wants her first time to be like, and we know how it's going to end, which fucking sucks to see happen.
Right.
So you're holding out hope that something changes, and to that point I do think it's interesting at the end, not to jump all the way there, but at the end, it does seem like Sean kind of changes his trajectory. Like we see that he makes a different decision at the end of the film. He doesn't go off with the girl and play out what we see in the opening credits. Instead, he gets on his motorcycle and rides away. I don't think that changes the stories of Paul and Lauren, because Paul's still kind of holding his ribs there at the end. So it seems like he still gets, beat up, as happens at the beginning of the movie. But I just found that I was like, what's the message there that he sort of is the one of these three characters that completely changes his trajectory? I don't know.
Well, I mean, what I will say I think about this film that is again compelling is like it's not trying to give us the answer.
Right.
It's never trying to give us the answer of like, what is the quote moral of this story? There is no fucking moral to this story. But I do think it's about watching how these characters transform and how these experiences with each other, without each other, change them over the course of what we're watching. And I think it's just an exercise. It's like a character study. It's an exercise in watching these people change, you know. But I don't think you're
Yeah.
supposed to necessarily get a narrative structure right out of it
No,
necessarily.
there's no moment of clarity where in typical Hollywood fashion where somebody would be like, "Oh, I'm a good person now because I learned from this." And I found this interesting. I didn't notice this before, but another fucked up scene in this that is like I can laugh because I've seen this movie 6 times. Again, I'm comparing it to American Psycho. There's some fucked up shit that I am
6 times.
comfortable like chuckling at because I see it as a dark comedy at this point. Again, not making light of this in any way, but the scene where Sean tries to
I
commit
know where you're
suicide in
going.
multiple
Yep.
methods is played for laughs. And then
Yep.
there is a moment where he gets up, he wakes up from all the sleeping pills that he took, and he's sitting on the ground, almost like pensive and reflecting. And there's I forget what the song is that's playing in the background, but it's very somber. And it feels like in a typical movie, that would be the moment where he realizes, oh my God, I need to change something about my life. And that's when he sees the fake blood and immediately is like, I'm gonna fuck with like whoever walks into the room next. And that's just demonstrating that this is not that type of movie where you're gonna get any sort of character growth. It's more just like them evolving more into who they are. You know, it's not a total career, I mean a story arc for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment in terms of not trying to show growth and just trying to show them becoming themselves. That scene is so wildly fucked. I
Yeah.
can't even tell you. Like I find it 0% funny. It is, you know, if you have, whether or not you've ever had somebody in your life who has tried this person tried this and then yes, woke up and thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is so fucking fucked, especially after the actual suicide that we see
Yeah.
earlier with the girl in the tub. And like he's aware of that. And like you can't, I don't think it is, I don't think it's effective commentary to go from an actual suicide that is rooted in, again, like a star-crossed lover's miscommunication, this person doesn't love me, I'm so lonely situation, which he is the object of, to then putting right next to that him making a joke of that. That's so wrong to me on so many
I
levels.
mean,
I don't know if it's in the source material. I don't know what the intent of it was. I don't appreciate it. I
yeah,
don't think I
and
don't think there's a way to
that
find it
is
funny.
every individual's prerogative to feel that way, and I recognize how fucked up. My personal thought would be that it is meant to be almost absurd and to again demonstrate how disconnected, how this dude just does not get it, that he thinks it's going to be funny to like not even funny, but like that he literally a day ago a person on campus commits suicide and he's like, oh, I'm sad because the girl I like doesn't like me, so I'm going to kill myself. And then when that doesn't work, he decides he's going to play a prank that he killed him. So like that is just to me demonstrating the obliviousness and just this hateable character that they're telling the story around. So dude, I know we can disagree on that completely because it is fucked up, and I think it's meant to be fucked up, and everyone who watches this can have any opinion they want about it.
Yeah. I think what is worth chatting about too, to your point earlier, is some of the shots that are happening here and the way that certain scenes are shot.
Yeah.
I will say by the end of it, it gets a little gimmicky for me. Like there's too
Janelle was
much.
like, they did too many of the backwards things. Like at
They
first it
did
was
too
cool, but they
many.
do it like 8 times, and yeah.
It's cool. It's compelling to start. And the I will say like the hallway scene with Shannyn Sossamon
Yes.
and James Van Der Beek where they're coming at each other,
Mm-hmm.
and then it molds together into one shot. That's a very cool shot. That's very
You
creatively
know what I
done.
like about that shot?
What?
is that if you pay attention to it, and again, I've seen this movie, but like several times, but if you pay attention, it's not perfect. When the cameras pan and go to a line, it's slightly, one is slightly like higher or more diagonal, and they kind of have to fix it.
Yeah.
I love that. I like that it is not this perfectly CGI constructed, like it feels like they literally did have two cameras sitting there next to each other and they tried to like form it into one thing on the spot. I know that's probably not the case, but it's like when you listen to old like Led Zeppelin songs or Beatles songs when everything wasn't so overproduced and you hear a fuck up on the drums, but it's fine. That's what that kind of reminds me of. And I appreciate that they tried something like this in 2002.
I don't know why you're picking on the drums, but
it's
okay,
usually the drums.
Fair.
Just
it's woof. I hope my dad's not listening. Sorry, Dad. Yeah, but I agree. I think it feels very authentic. And I mean, just fun fact on the side for those who don't know, this is the first film that was edited with Final Cut Pro. So it was like the first one that to prove kind of how it could be edited that way. So I wonder how much of it is in the edit and in the shot, and I think that is coalesced into an interesting visual. And again, I think that visual is very well done, very compelling, despite its imperfections. And the reverse shots are really interesting as well. But yeah, I think my thing with it is that, yes, by the end it gets old. Even the credits are run in reverse.
Backwards, yeah. I like the shot in the beginning of the ice in the keg refreezing. I know nowadays that seems like rote and we've seen it a million times, but I thought for its time that was kind of a cool shot to like establish the world.
I think it's still like, I don't know if you're feeling kind of like nostalgic or retro or whatever.
Yeah.
It's still kind of cool. Like it's still like a fun little shot.
I also, you mentioned you gave reference earlier to Victor's entire montage, and I think that is just the fact that happens, what, an hour and 20 into the movie? They wait so long to get us to this character that we've been hearing so much about, and then that entire montage is just, again, super different from anything else I had seen in films before that, and apparently, it's like you said, insanely expensive to shoot. Took like 2 or 3 weeks of them traveling through Europe to get all of that stuff. They did it after the rest of the movie had wrapped. They ended up with some crazy like 70 hours of footage and even attempted to release a completely separate second film about Victor's story in Europe. But I guess due to a bunch of like licensing rights with shooting locations and music, it's called Glitterati. You can look it up, but like there's no footage of it to my knowledge outside of what's in this film. But they tried to make a second film 2 years later and they couldn't release it.
Yeah, I mean, it is some of the more compelling footage in terms of, again, like just it takes you out of this different pacing and this different world and environment that you've been sitting in, this college campus that is reflective of every college campus we've ever seen, apparently, because it's supposed to be a New Hampshire college and it's definitely shot in Redlands, California. But it's really interesting to see that kind of set against the rest of it, especially when the character comes back and, she has this whole vision of this relationship and she's been waiting for him. And it just also speaks, I think, to the delusion that we potentially experience in various unrequited love situations in our lives of like, she's talking about how this man is her boyfriend. He's going to be her first. He's coming back from Europe, blah, blah, blah. But yet somehow she has no communication with this man. And she's the last person to know that he's even back. And she's going and knocking on his door instead of picking him up at the airport or just walking right in or him coming straight to her, like whatever. There are just so many problems with that dynamic that tells you, as delusional as Paul is about Sean and Sean is about Lauren, Lauren is as delusional about Victor. And so that creates this more interesting cycle to me. And it's so painful to watch her have that moment with him of him not remembering her at all. And it's really brutal and it makes you feel sympathetic for her.
I don't know if I feel sympathetic as much as, to me, it shows that she is just like everyone in this movie is a little bit delusional, which I think is just par for the course for humans when you have a crush on somebody. Like, have you ever had a crush on somebody, whether as a teenager or as an adult, where you wanted to pursue them, you felt this spark, but then as soon as you like, whether it's kissing or having sex, whatever it is that you finally achieve, things change and you're like, this isn't what I thought it would be. Have you ever had that letdown moment where you thought that there was this strong connection with somebody and then when you got there, you were like, oh, well, no, I don't really want this anymore. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
See? Like
relatively recently, actually. Okay. And I was and I was very like, oh, okay.
I think
I'm all done with this.
Like, we need to turn this into a love podcast, I think.
We super do, because I don't know what have you heard the term the ick?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you get the ick, right?
yeah.
And so like I love that term for it because it's really hard to put your finger on, right? You're like, I don't know
Hmm.
what it is, but all of a sudden I have the ick about this person and that I was deeply attracted to 5 minutes ago. And then they said this one thing or did this one thing, and you're like, ooh, no, gone. Have the ick.
Yeah, dude.
Um,
So I think it's
yeah.
just the lesson of this movie is that people do fall in love with the idea of someone else or the possibilities or this magic
Yeah.
moment. And I think the point that we're supposed to take is that nothing ever really happened between Lauren and Victor, or something really minor
No.
happened that he doesn't even fucking remember, and
He
she has
doesn't even
been like
register. Yeah.
obsessing over. But that's
Yeah.
what triggers sort of like
That's what makes me
him.
heartbroken for her, I think is what it is, where I'm like, poor thing.
Well, but that's what sort of triggers, right? Victor breaks her heart. I guess that's the right term
Yeah.
to use. And then immediately Sean comes to see her. She breaks his heart. And then Paul comes to see Sean and breaks his heart. So, like,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of this, like,
It's
cycle
this
of nobody
heartbreak
getting what
train.
they
I mean,
want. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Nobody gets what they want at the end of this.
Well, I think it comes back to one of the things that I said at the beginning, which I think is true, is like the sincerity of it all is never rewarded in this story because no matter how strongly she felt about him or any of them felt about each other, it it just didn't register to them in
Right.
the same way, right? And so like, but it's almost, ugh, I don't want to give it too much credit, but it's almost like the much ado about nothing moment, right? Of like you don't
Hmm.
even realize where and when the intentions are directed and it becomes this circular thing. So, yeah, I think that part is compelling. The relationships are compelling. Um, I don't think it has to go this far to make these points. I think is maybe my biggest
It's,
problem with this.
I don't know what the right word, I think you used something earlier, but it's excessive, I guess might be the right
Grotesque,
word.
gratuitous, I think is what I said.
Gratuitous.
And
Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's the word for it. It seems very self-indulgent as like an art piece. It feels like it knows it's trying to be an artsy fartsy kind of film, but it's also trying to captivate through offending people. Like it's
yeah,
trying to shock you in a way, and
yeah.
that's like those aren't my favorite parts of the film, but I understand for the most part why they're here. Even there's the scene. Is it weird that in a film with so many fucked up things that the weirdest thing that gives me almost the most ick, not to say it's worse, but the entire professor hanging out with his students constantly and like hooking up with his students, but
And
even that
canceling
gets
class and doing all that.
played
Yeah.
for a laugh, and it
That is
demonstrates.
one of the more traumatic moments, I think, actually, like the way he abuses his power over the women in his classes is
Yeah, it's been
super fucked.
him wearing the wedding ring is the most icky part of it, and then again it tries to lean into this darkest of comedy corners where he says like, no, I'm not trying to have sex with you, I'm a married man, and she has this
But you can
line.
give me a blowjob.
Well, but I don't laugh at that part. I laugh when, not laugh, but I find it humorous when he's got his hands on her, they're kissing, and then he says that like, I'm a married man, and she goes, aren't you hitting on me? Like that to me is kind of dark comedy because like he's kissing you, like, aren't you hitting on me? That
Yeah.
seems like such a dumb thing to ask. And then her taking the gum out, like that is, I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's like lol hilarious, but it's, I think that scene itself is meant to demonstrate this movie is not meant to be taken seriously. This is not a straightforward drama.
I th- yeah, I think that's fair, a fair call out. I think the other thing it's saying about her in that scene is how naive she really is.
Yeah.
So it actually becomes, it is definitely dark comedy, but it becomes even a little bit darker, I think, in
Yeah.
that moment because she is almost too innocent, right? Because she's in college and, and she's doing lines of coke to an excessive degree with her girlfriends in the room and she's going to these parties and blah, blah, blah. And so like, she's not an idiot. She's not like she has no exposure to the world around her. But when she gets into these one-on-one scenes, she displays this real lack of self-esteem and this real lack of self-awareness of the situations in which she has found herself. And it's as much an indictment on the dynamics of the professor, her relationship, and the other various relationships as it is on her own treatment of those situations, like how unseriously she's taking them,
Yeah, that's a great
Um,
point, dude, because we've talked about how much she's building up her first time throughout this film and hoping
mhm.
that it's going to be with Victor or Sean. And the fact that she doesn't seem threatened or scared or like uncomfortable during his approach
But
of
she
her in this.
should be.
She should be, but the fact that she's willing to be like, well, I guess I'll just have sex with my professor, maybe there's something happening there that we don't know about from her internal monologue of like she seems almost okay with this. Not saying that she is, but her
Right.
performance of it sort of says that.
Well, and she might be, and it's telling. I think that's a great call out of like the moments in which we get her internal monologue do not exist here, right? Like it
Right.
doesn't happen here. And I think it's supposed to make you interpret that in your own way. I think it would be very interesting to understand if she felt concern about the power dynamic here, right? Like we just can't ignore that part. Or rooted in a totally different angle of maybe the power dynamic wasn't an issue. They're both consenting adults, blah, blah, blah. But maybe she felt disillusioned by her other relationship and the lack of status or this unrequited love, right? And so like this is the next best thing, and I just want something. I want some kind of connection, which would also be a very valid way to move through that situation, completely understandably. But I think because you don't have any monologue there or even any commentary from her there, it's a disconcerting scene. Because you don't know how she's taking it. And if she's a victim again, or if she's just lost.
That's yeah, dude. I referred to that earlier. Of like, I think throughout when you're watching this, you want to like Lauren. You feel as though she is the most pure and innocent of the characters.
Yeah.
And then as you go on between this, not saying that this sullies her image, but her approach to it is like, wait, do I know who this person is, or do I just have their own selfish idea of who they are? And then the thing with Victor, I think they are making the point of like, yeah, this is a campus full of like fucked up rich white kids with way too much time and money on their hands and drugs. And like everyone's image of themselves, their perception of themselves and the people around them is very glossed up, and no one is actually who they think they are. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's the best possible note that we could end on, to be honest. Because otherwise I'll just go down the rabbit hole of rage. Anyways, so with that in mind, I will say, like, I'll give you all the credit in the world. You're making me think about it so much more than I wanted to, because it was very easy for me to dismiss on the first watch. So with that in mind, what would be your rating?
Yeah, it's a fucked up movie, dude. I appreciate you giving it a chance, and glad that we could talk through it and at least shed some light from. And I'm glad that you did the research of like looking into why other people appreciate.
I tried so hard, you guys. If nothing else, I want credit for that.
Yeah. The only other thing, the only scene, and I'll use this as my segue. I think the scene with the moms coming in, it feels so out of left field that far into the movie again to bring like the mothers in and have the scene with Paul and like a former lover of his, we assume. But I feel like that is so demonstrative. It's a necessary scene in this because it just shows this generational unawareness of like the moms are sitting there getting drunk and doing pills together, and they're like, what did that school do to you, when it's like this fucked up kid who's like drinking a bottle of Jack.
What is that? Doesn't matter. Does it even matter?
So it just shows that sort of generation gap of like, these kids have fucked up parents too,
right?
And I think as a means of segue, the best line of this film, I believe, is the awkward as fuck segue after they kick Dick out of the restaurant. He storms off and there's a pause, and then Faye Dunaway goes, I think my next car is going to be blue. I'm stealing that, Faye Dunaway. Anytime there is an awkward pause at a party from now on, that is my go-to. So with that, I will segue into my rating. We didn't talk a ton about the performances, but like no one in this, I mean, there's a couple like weaker of the lower tier characters in this, but the main roles I think are solidly acted. I think Van Der Beek is similar to Christian Bale, just
he's terrifyingly good at this.
Yeah, terrifying, charming. I wouldn't go as far to say likable, but his ability to, in that first scene, transition that evil fucking sinister stare smile, like where he's got it, the camera's angled at like the top of his head, and then he immediately looks up and he has the Dawson face, and it's like, oh, we like it. Like, he's so good in this for being such a hateable character. And fucking,
does he have a split personality here? Sidebar. But anyways, that just opened up a whole new thought process for me.
It's either split personalities or just a lot of really fucked up ones, or like one fucked up one. But the last thing I was going to say was Margaret Qualley, you definitely owe some residuals to Shannyn Sossamon for the lip bite. I think Shannyn kind of nails it in this movie, and that like Margaret
You
Qualley.
love the Shannyn Sossamon lip bite.
Dude,
I
I'm a
think
big
it comes
fan.
up
I'm a big
every
fan.
time we talk
Yeah.
about her.
I'm surprised nobody thought to do it in the first, 70 years of Hollywood. It wasn't until Shannyn showed up. Somebody's like, maybe I should bite my lip. Anyway, I will keep the rest of this short. I will say, for me, this again, I do not love this film, but occasionally
Right.
when I throw this on, it is like not a cathartic experience. It's just a different experience, and it's something that I don't want to rewatch constantly, but I still get some enjoyability out of it despite the dark subject matter. I'll give it like a 7.5. It's like
Jesus.
I mean, IMDb is what, like a 6.7 or something. I feel like I'm not that much higher than the average.
No,
it's
you're
not a
you're
great film, but for me, it's watchable.
You're not out of the average at all. But I think I will say in all sincerity, I think some of the play is the nostalgia of it all. One of the things that for you, I mean, I could be wrong, but I just mean if you watched it now, I think it would be different. But one of the things that I read was like this guy literally reviewing this in great detail, enamored detail. And he was like, the first time I saw this, I was 14. And I wonder how much of my love of this film is that I was the perfect age to watch it when I watched it. And I wonder how much of that is a factor, not only for you, but for everyone who saw this then and was like, this is so impactful in this moment. Because I've had movies like that too, where like I go back and watch them later and I'm like, this doesn't really hold up.
You remember when we covered The Breakfast Club and we were talking about, hey, if you had seen this as a high schooler, you would think high school was so badass and you would feel so seen or whatever. This is like the dream of what 17-year-olds in 2002 thought college was going to be like. And you get there and it's like, first off, nobody's having like naked party orgies at my college. No. There's not even a fucking bathtub.
There's like, maybe a toga
what college
party
campus has a bathtub on it? Like only these rich as fuck. Anyway, sorry.
Anyways, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I have to come in. Oh God, so much lower. I'm sorry. Like no worries, I don't want to be this person, but what I would say is like, I don't personally want to recommend this to people. I want to be clear, like that's where my rating is rooted at this point, of not because it's not compelling, it's not thought-provoking, there's not something to be discussed here. Obviously, we're talking about it for an hour. But I would not recommend this to a single person that I know, certainly a woman. So I have to go like a 4.5. Like I can't even give it the go watch it. Unless again you saw it, then go with God. But if you haven't seen it, I don't recommend it.
No, I hear you.
All right, kids. Thanks for listening to me rage again 2 weeks in a row. I'm so sorry, but I really did enjoy, like I said, seeing kind of your perspective. It was really compelling.
Spoiler, I might rage a little bit next week. So.
And I'm actually excited for that. We haven't had like a strong disagreements in a while. It's time to shake shit up here on the pod, you guys. But anyway, with that in mind, thanks for joining our first iteration of Love Stinks, and come back next week for round 2, where we are going to talk about the selection that is taking the world by storm, for better or worse, wildly divisive film, the adaptation, which is a big part of the problem for people, of Wuthering Heights.
And this is which of the 106 versions is this one? This is the one that just came out?
Oh my God. This is the one that just came out, 2026. This is the Emerald Fennel one, which for those of you who are going to maybe come back and watch it and haven't seen it yet, this is the same director of Saltburn. Mm-hmm. And so if you listened to that episode or you saw that film, expect similar experiences is what I would say, and decide accordingly if you want to see that.
If Emerald Fennel's ever seen Rules of Attraction.
And I'm sorry, I should connect myself. Fennel. I always say it wrong. It's Fennel.
Fennel rhymes with Janelle. I will remember that for next week's episode.
Oh, good trick. Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like we should ask her. I think she would hate Rules of Attraction.
I would think she might have seen it when she was younger and been like, yeah, I kind of want to make movies like this, like really fucked up characters. Not the Wuthering Heights as much, but Saltburn.
She's a very gothic girly, and I mean gothic capital G in the like literary sense. Her degree is in literature, and so that for me shows in the stuff that she makes. So yeah, we'll talk more about that. Anyways, in the meantime,
In the meantime, follow us on our socials on Instagram mostly. We drink and we watch things. You can also get the video of this podcast on Spotify video or on YouTube. And you can always email us.
Coming soon, by the way, on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, they're adding video as well?
They are, and I'm working on getting us on the list, you guys.
I'm curious, yeah, when our Apple Podcast enables video, will our viewership go up or down? I'm a little worried. I need to.
I'm actually. Well, I wasn't worried, and now I'm worried. Thanks.
I feel like nobody on going way back to radio, no one ever looks the way you think they do in your head. Yeah. So I feel like that's a little risky. We'll see how it goes.
I wear makeup now because of this fucking video podcast.
Me too. But yeah, you can email us. We drink and we watch things pod@gmail.com. If you got ideas for movies we should cover, themes, questions, feedback, let us know where you stand on this one. You know, whose side of the fence are you on?
I'm so curious, actually. Yeah. Okay, well, for now, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.